Well, forget it. I'm not going to go anyway. Hi, this is Scott Ott with Bill Whittle Now and Bill. The on-again, off-again trip of U.S. Representative Rashida Tlaib to the Middle East, specifically to the West Bank, ostensibly to visit her 90-year-old grandmother. Rashida Tlaib is of Palestinian descent. Initially was on, and then after some complaints from the Trump administration that she was a supporter of the boycott, divest, and what does the S stand for? Can never remember that. The BDS movement, essentially, against Israel. Then Israel said, no, we don't want you coming. And then Israel said, well, you can come as long as you don't, as long as you sign a document that says you're not going to support the boycott Israel movement while you're here, at which point Rashida Tlaib said, forget it, I'm not going to come. And it would be, she said that it would kill a piece of me if she were to go under those oppressive conditions. Bill, this may develop even more by the time we get this video up online. But just from the beginning instance of this, if you're President Trump and this thorn in your side wants to leave the country for a while, wouldn't you say, hey, can I pay for your ticket?
No, I wouldn't. I would not. For a person who's basically spent her entire life dedicated to the destruction of the state that she's trying to visit, I wouldn't, not only would I not let her in if I was Netanyahu, I also would point out that fact if I was Donald Trump on every single opportunity I can. One of the great mysteries of modern politics is why so many Jewish Americans vote Democratic, when at least after 8 years of Obama was clearly on the side of the Iranians on just about everything. And now you've got an openly anti-Semitic woman who's calling for the destruction of Israel, who's sitting in the United States Congress. And I think Donald Trump is right to point this out. I think it was a great move. And when you were telling me the story, I remember thinking, oh, this is what fighting back looks like.
Well, you know, it's interesting because at one point in this back and forth, Rashida Tlaib actually told Israel that she really wanted to see her grandma and that she would, I'm going to give you her words, that she would respect any restrictions and will not promote boycotts against Israel during my visit. And then it seems like Israel said, okay, great, put it in writing. And that's when things seem to have broken down.
Well, that's a little odd, don't you think? You make a promise to somebody and you're a political figure and you basically say, I promise that I'm going to deliver 100 crates of tomatoes to your restaurant tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. And the guy says, okay, great. Here's a contract. Well, I couldn't sign a contract. That would kill a part of me if I had to sign a contract saying I would deliver 10 crates of tomato tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. What does that tell you?
Well, it seems that...
maybe it tells me that they're not going to be delivering at all or on time. That's what it tells me.
It seems that Benjamin Netanyahu is going to take some heat from his own people over this whole debacle, in part because he seemed to acquiesce to the wishes of the Americans, and it looks like he was ceding a kind of Israeli sovereignty to President Trump's wish to say, don't let this woman in.
After 8 years of Barack Obama and his undermining and essentially selling out of Israel, when Donald Trump becomes president of the United States and the U.S. Embassy moves from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, I get the feeling Donald Trump has a few more brownie points left to burn, and so does Netanyahu. I don't for a second think that anything like this is going to tarnish Donald Trump's reputation among the actual Jews who live in Israel. And I certainly don't think it's going to cause any damage between the relationship between these two men, which for the first time in my living memory, certainly my political memory, both Israel and the United States have leaders who are just adamantly defenders of their own country, if you can imagine such a wacky concept.
Well, Bill, it's possible that this young woman just wanted to see Grandma, and certainly as an American, we enjoy the freedom to travel all over the world, with very few exceptions, and it just looks like the American government's cracking down on her freedom of speech. Bill, maybe she wanted to visit the site of the new American embassy in Jerusalem.
Well, if she did, I'd frisk her thoroughly. This entire argument is just childish. Look, let's depoliticize it. If I spent my entire career saying that that Australia is a race of mongrels that needs to be exterminated from the face of the earth and pushed back into the ocean, and that I think Sydney should disappear into a sea of molten glass by throwing every single nuclear weapon we have against them. And I say that all of the Australians in the world are responsible for every single crime that goes on in the world, and they're genocidal and all the rest of it. And then I apply for a visa to Australia. And Australia doesn't even say no. They just say, we would appreciate it if you didn't say the things that you've been saying your entire life while you're here. I couldn't commit to that. That would kill a part of me. What about this is unfair? Why would I be surprised? In fact, the fact that I could be outraged about this at all tells me that it's either fake outrage or I am so far disconnected from fundamental human sanity that I actually do believe I could spend my life calling for the destruction of Australia and the extinction of all Australians, and then somehow have trouble getting in to visit Australia because my grandmother lives there.
Israeli Interior Minister Aryeh Deri said the fact that
I'm not calling for the destruction or genocide of Australians, I might point out.
No, and the Australians that you drove into the ocean all came here. So
they all swam back. They're tremendous swimmers, and
right.
and they're very nearly as good as American swimmers.
Very nearly.
That's going to get me in a lot of
So the Israeli Interior Minister Aryeh Deri basically said the fact that Rashida Tlaib, the representative, Rashida Tlaib, has canceled her visit now proves that she hates Israel more than she loves her grandmother, and that in fact she intended to be provocative when she got there and just could not restrain that aspect of her personality. Who are we to judge somebody else's thoughts, Bill? Why would conservatives in the United States support this official from another government essentially saying that an American citizen doesn't have the right to speak her mind?
An American citizen, her right to speak her mind, you may have noticed from the recent speaking of her mind that she's committed for the last almost 2 years now. Her right to speak her mind has not been compromised, but her right to enter the house of somebody who she openly condemns and basically wants to murder doesn't strike me as an unreasonable decision on the part of the people that own the house. If somebody... If she had basically dedicated her entire life to saying that if I ever visit Bill Whittle's house, I'm going to burn it down. I'm just going to burn it down. And I say, and then she says, oh, and I want to visit Bill's house because my grandmother lives across the way. I wouldn't let her in the first place, but that's not what Israel did. Israel basically said to their, I think to Israel's enormous credit, basically said, look, it's like me saying, all right, you're not a friend of mine. If you really want to come to stay in my house, that's fine. You just got to promise not to set it on fire when you're here. And she says, oh, no, I'd be happy to say that. And then I said, I need you to put that in writing. No, I couldn't put it in writing. That would kill a part of me to be able to say that I'm not going to burn your house down while you're in it and I'm in it too. And when I have the means to do something about it, the whole thing is a tempest in a teapot. And it's not just that. This is not just a case of manufactured outrage, although it is that. This is, in fact, a clear indication that the days of political correctness, simply knocking people over without any kind of a fight, are over. And to say to the victim in this, the victim, of course, being a Palestinian, a Muslim, and a woman, to tell the victim, no, you don't get to come here and express your victimhood even further because of the things that you have said about us, our country, our people, and our culture, is a sign that Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump both are not beholden to this pistol at their head of political correctness. And these are the two politicians that I've seen most clearly in the last 30 years who are not suffering from Stockholm Syndrome, who do not feel a genuine obligation to kowtow to kowtow not to a political opinion, to the ravings of a bunch of professional agitators, and simply say no. I thought Israel's terms were generous, and they are generous. And for her to simply say, no, I'd be happy to not say anything bad about Israel while I'm there. Okay, we need you to put it in writing. That to me tells me that this is not about her grandmother. It's about her opportunity to showboat and grandstand and get a lot of press while she's in Israel.
Well, Bill, you bring up a good point here, because while the news stories have focused on Rashida Tlaib's bonds of consanguinity, her desire to visit her grandmother, as a matter of fact, the trip was originally planned. Rashida Tlaib, Representative Ilhan Omar, and Stacey Plaskett, who is a non-voting congressional rep from the U.S. Virgin Islands, had planned a 4-day fact-finding tour to examine the condition of the Palestinians under Israeli occupation. All three women Democrats were concerned that the U.S. has cut aid to East Jerusalem hospitals and Palestinian refugees and have moved the United States Embassy to Jerusalem. So, Bill, it's not just a family matter. She is doing her duty as a representative of the people of the United States. Don't you have respect for that?
What does the State of Palestinians, which I contest this entire position to begin with, needless to say. But what part of her job as a United States congressman is responsible for the plight of people in Palestine?
She is performing her legislative oversight duty as a member of Congress, and it's a fact-finding tour. And remember what Vice President Joe Biden said, Bill.
First of all, fact-finding mission means tourist, okay? Let's just get that out of the way. A fact-finding mission means we're going on a fact-finding mission to the Cayman Islands. So fact-finding mission I don't buy, and I've never bought from any representative under any circumstances.
Fact-finding mission means it's being paid for by the U.S. taxpayer.
Well, imagine that. Now, let's just go back to the issue. What part of her oath to defend the Constitution of the United States and the people of this country, what does that have to do with the Palestinian people under any circumstances whatsoever? What on earth do you think, or does she think, gives her the authority, the legal authority, to go and look into something that she has absolutely no jurisdiction over whatsoever, no influence over whatsoever, and whose business is her own private business? Because she said she was the one who was going to see her grandmother, and when that fell through, now all of a sudden it's about horrible conditions in Israel. What part of her job as a representative of, I don't even remember what district she's in, but what part of her representation of those people of the United States is concerned with what's happening to Palestinians who are not under U.S. sovereignty? What part of that is justifiable?
Okay, you've asked what part of that 6 times. I thought I already answered that question up front. What part
Tell
of
me
that?
Again.
The part of that is, Bill, that Congress is responsible to provide the funding for these activities and is responsible for oversight of the executive branch to make sure that they're performing as Congress intended.
This is
so
not,
as a representative of her constituents.
These are not Palestinians that are being held in Guantanamo Bay. If that were the case, you'd have grounds for a case. If the people in question were under United States custody, then as a representative of the United States government, she would have not only an interest but an obligation to make sure that these things are going on. But the people who are doing the presumed oppressing have nothing to do with our government, and the people who are being pressed have nothing to do with our government. It has nothing to do with her whatsoever, and you know it.
Except that a lot of our money is involved in that, and they are responsible for oversight of the distribution of that money. So as a representative of Congress, she's saying, are we appropriately spending our money to prop up the Israeli government, to support, are we spending enough to support their efforts to alleviate the discomfort of Palestinian refugees and to help that East Jerusalem hospital she's talking about?
Okay.
All of this is part of her oversight role.
You've got an actual point there. That's an actual point. I'm going to concede that point. Because the United States is giving money to Israel, that involves the United States government, and on that point, I'm willing to agree that yes, okay, she does have some obligation there.
So because of that, President Trump may be seen as trying to interfere with the role of the legislature by encouraging a foreign entity, a foreign country, to bar her entry into that country in order to perform her legislative duties as a member of Congress.
Is she a member of the Oversight Committee or the Foreign Relations Committee or the Intelligence Committee?
Not sure on that, but she certainly would have a vote.
Yes, but that's not how it works. And we all know that, right? That's why we have committees in the first place. If there's a problem, perceived problem with the way that Israel is spending American money, then that becomes the purview of either the Foreign Relations Committee or whichever committee is appropriations, whatever the case may be. Whoever has the authority in terms of the committee of that, yes, she has a vote. Absolutely, she has a vote, and she'll get a chance to exercise her vote when representatives from the appropriate committee deem it necessary to go on a fact-finding mission. But no one has deemed it necessary to go on a fact-finding mission until she found out that she couldn't go to Israel to trash Israel while ostensibly visiting her grandmother. So suddenly falling back on this position of I need to go because it's a government job, I don't buy.
Well, let me be fair to her, because the sequence in which I revealed those things in this program isn't necessarily the sequence in which they've happened. I think that the fact-finding mission was planned, and because her grandmother lives there, it just dovetails nicely with her desire to see her grandmother.
The state of Israel has the right to keep out anybody they want to. We do not, as the United States, have an obligation to admit every single member of parliament around the world. We don't have an obligation to admit Baathists who might have been members of the Ba'ath Party in Saddam Hussein's Iraq just because they're representatives of their government. We have a right, and Israel has a right, to determine who we let into the country and why. And if you're telling me that somehow Israel's determination that she put in writing her pledge not to demean and call for the destruction of the country she's visiting while she's there somehow is an intrusion on not only her rights, but on the functioning of the United States government, I find that to be a pretty long reach, Scott. And I think most sensible people would too. To the degree that I really do need to know if she's on any of these committees, because if she's not, then she has no business being the point person for the House of Representatives. That's why we have committees. Presumably the idea is that there's so much going on in the world that not every single member of the House of Representatives can be everywhere all the time. And so we determine that these representatives are going to be dealing with this issue. Those are going to be dealing with that issue. And an assignment to all of these committees, which I'm not in favor of necessarily, by the way. There's a lot of problems with this. But all of these seniority and assignments and all of this crap is predicated on the idea that Congress has to have a division of labor. And if she is not part of one of those committees, then I think she has zero argument as far as the representative of the United States is concerned.
Well, because I don't have that information at my fingertips.
I don't either.
Let's leave it at this, though, Bill, because clearly she doesn't go there. She doesn't go there without the say-so of the Speaker of the House, who's the one who assigns the committees. So let's assume that at the very least, the imprimatur of Representative Nancy Pelosi, the House Speaker, goes with her. Otherwise, she wouldn't be going at all.
Again, if this trumps if you'll pardon the expression, the right of Israel to determine that we would rather not have people openly committed to our genocide, I don't see it, and I don't see any infringement of U.S. oversight. I don't see any infringement on the part of the United States government to monitor where it spends its money or how. What I see is a rabid, anti-Semitical jihadist who wants to go to Israel to showboat and who was denied entry into the country only because she would not put the promise that she made verbally in writing. And that tells me something. And what it tells me is that this whole thing is just a giant showboating, grandstanding opportunity for this nasty, nasty person who is elected to the shame of all Democrats, in my opinion, to continue with her one-person publicity campaign. And Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump said, I don't think we should feed this fire, and I agree with them 100%.
Realizing that the pace of events may overtake what we do here on a daily basis, we've decided that when we can't move at the speed of Twitter, we can go a lot deeper. And the members at BillWhittle.com have made it possible for us to delve deeply into these subjects and to weigh the breaking news of the day vis-a-vis the principles that have proven themselves to be valuable over time. Those members got to be a member by going to BillWhittle.com and clicking the Become a Member link. Perhaps you can be one of us. Go to that site, and frankly,
we need you.
If you don't like it, just ask us for a refund. We'll cut you loose, and you can go back to the toxic sewer of social media and have fruitless debates with far leftists. For Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making this possible.